that talking about how the U.S., even though it has a low turnout, we are the most democratic because we have the most elections?
Yeah. The United States is considered the most democratic country in the world because it has the most elections.
Not that we vote the most.
Yeah, we actually vote in the 25th percentile, which means that 75% of the world turns out at a higher percentage than we do. But when you think about it, we have the most elections, which means we have the most opportunities to choose. We just don't always choose to exercise that choice.
I forget, what country was it which had the the highest turnout?
I don't think I gave you that.
We talked about.
Do you know?
I brought up how Australia forces everyone.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
I forget the exact country for our purposes now. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Don't worry about it at all.
Switzerland?
What is the least democratic?
Okay, some people, the least democratic would be, I guess we're not the least democratic, but some folks would say we're absolutely not the most, and it's because we vote at such a lousy percentage. And I think I had put on the board that typically in presidential elections, we vote around 50, 55%. I think we've gone up as high as almost 60. In state and local elections, if you remember, we get 30 to 40. And then in local elections, it's probably 20 to 30 with mayors and city council folk. And that's actually what really brings us down.
Yeah, and so most democratic and least democratic they're both talking about us.
Yes, absolutely. So that's what that is. Sleeping Dog's pretty straightforward. The Popeye is the cartoon. And obviously that link is there, so there shouldn't be any issue. Korematsu, we covered a pretty good bit. We spent almost a whole class on that. And that kind of gets into the Japan articles. But I guess before we get into Korematsu, there was the Denver weed article. That was actually a pretty good one, talking about how they were legalizing possession. There was the Barbara Harris article. What do you remember about Barbara Harris?
She was paying drug addicts to be sterilized.
Yeah, she was. Barbara Harris was basically paying these drug-addicted women how much? $200. She was paying them $200 if they were sterilized or if they provided proof of long-term birth control. What was the controversy with Barbara Harris?
That it said it was targeting the black community.
Okay. Disproportionately targeting black women.
30% of her clients for them.
But only about 15% of the American population was, so completely disproportionate. Anything else?
And they said that it was a way that they were trying to bring down the populations of the black.
Okay.
And
They also,
and then, there was also like the crackheads babies. They were trying to.
Yeah, why was she sterilizing these women? What was her purpose? Go ahead.
Her purpose is to eliminate crack babies.
Yeah, she was basically looking at protecting drug-addicted babies. And why was this kind of important to her?
Because if you eliminate the crack babies, then there will be none in society. The government won't be paying for them. They won't follow in their parents' footsteps.
And if the government isn't paying for them, then who does that mean isn't paying for them?
The citizens.
The taxpayers aren't paying for them. What was her big purpose, though? Go ahead.
well, there were two other issues that were controversial. There was the fact that she was compared to Hitler, in the sense that she was kind of exterminating people.
She was kind of exercising her
control over.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there was also the fact that she didn't think about the other things involved. Like, she thought about only drugs, but she didn't think about malnutrition or inadequate parental care.
There was something else that was pretty obvious that she missed.
Miscarriages?
Not the miscarriages. Basically, she was arguing that she was preventing abortions and miscarriages and drug-addicted babies. Her focus was on the babies, so who got ignored?
The people
The
that
women.
are going to use the money.
The women
to
absolutely
drugs.
did. And the sense was that, okay, she's going to give these women that don't, or maybe not be in their right mind because of crack addiction, $200. What are they likely going to go do?
Buy more crack.
They're going to go buy more crack, which means they're going to give up their reproductive rights for $200 worth of crack when they're not in their right mind, and maybe 5 years later, if they get cleaned up, what are they going to be able to do? So kind of keep that in mind. You remember her van?
Yeah.
Her
The
daddy
blue
died,
eyes.
her mommy's addiction.
Yeah.
With
she's
blue
got her daddy's
eyes.
And the blue eyes were on the side of the van, and her mommy's addiction. So she had a mobile unit that would go around, and it's perfectly legal. What was that an example of? Because this is basically political socialization. Who is socializing in this instance? What's that?
Barbara.
Yeah, what would be the term for Barbara?
A citizen.
Yeah, a peer. She is a peer as basically somebody that's socializing. What were the other categories?
Media, government.
Media, government,
Administration.
peer, school, and family. Which one's the most important?
Family.
Family. At what age do you get to the point where you understand, or you're capable of understanding as the average citizen, political issues? 14, when you reach that age of political socialization. So family's most important, whether it's positive or rebelling against the family. School comes in, and do you remember the example of the school article that I'd given you? With socialization.
I'm just thinking about you in the Star Spangled Banner.
That actually would be an example of that. Yes, you could use that if that ends up being one of those questions. The Star Spangled Banner, when I had problems learning that, I made sure I stood up with everybody else, but what was the article?
Wasn't it about California, like the one, like half a vote or something?
The voting thing, like that if the younger kids, their vote would count as like one.
You're talking about
half.
Japan textbooks, aren't you?
I was thinking about Japan textbooks, but we'll come back to this. Go ahead, because we haven't talked about California yet either. Go ahead. What was the story with California?
But California has like the seventh of American population.
Yes.
And they are installing something like when you're 18, you have one vote. When you're 16 to 17, I think, you have half a
might
vote.
be
And
annoying
when
to you.
you're lower, like 14
Am I
to
annoying you
15,
by sitting
have
here?
a quarter vote.
Alright, good.
You have a quarter vote. That's right. Did it pass? Well, why was California doing this?
That's in fairness. There was a question of fairness.
Okay, it was not fair. And this, why was it not fair?
Because it's like half a person or quarter a person.
Yeah,
It's
when
like
you
the
think back
slavery.
to it, everybody's vote should count the same. So if one person's count is twice as much or 4 times as much as somebody else's, then that seems like that's discrimination in some manner. Absolutely, that's a really good point. In reference to the California thing, they were basically trying to get people that were politically mature enough to be able to get into the system, to add new blood, so to speak. What would be some of the arguments that you should allow people younger than 18 to vote that we talked about?
The tax.
They pay their taxes, they work, different things along these lines. Of course, you could also make the argument that they would be strongly influenced by their parents, and maybe that's a
But
reason
that's
to
for
not.
women. Like, that's what they said during the women's rights thing.
That
like-
they would be strongly influenced
No,
by
they'd be
their
strongly
parents.
influenced by their husbands. That's the reason why women shouldn't have the vote. That was one of the main arguments they had for that, for not
See, I
letting
read
vote.
some studies that the homeschool folks are strongly influenced by their parents when it comes to voting. Not that I'm looking at anybody in particular when I say this. Understand, there are going to be at least 2 or 3 homeschool questions on the exam. I promise somebody's going to get homeschooled.